Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics, joined by the great trader Jim Paterson, who also runs Valor Metals, which is out exploring for platinum and palladium. So I thought it'd be a good time to bring Jim on because we have some fireworks in platinum once again. Really over the last month, 2 months since the beginning of the year. And Jim, you know the joys of how easy it is. I mean, I hear this stuff is just lying around in the JP Morgan offices, and there's tons of it around. Or actually, is it really hard to find? So appreciate you joining me here today. And first of all, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. It's been too long.
Well, I know, and I think there could be some clues about everything going on in the platinum market. I know some of the hardcore gold and silver is money crowd doesn't pay attention to that as much or feels as important yet. I think there's a degree to which people are starting to buy anything that isn't treasury paper. So anyway, why don't you share any thoughts you have of where we stand today? I'll pull up the platinum price and let you take it away and probably have a handful of questions for you.
Well, I thought last year we would be in a surplus scenario, but it's obviously not happening. There kind of been an about face, a lot of confusion at the beginning of 2020 with which way all markets would be going with COVID lockdowns and shutdowns and constricting of different channels. But what it also did at the beginning of 2020, the first quarter anyways, when everything was getting locked down and shut down, the mines were also getting locked down and shut down. You probably had these conversations with different miners around the world where, depending upon the jurisdiction, there'd be just supply disruptions, and those in some cases completely outweighed the drop in demand. And then 2020 in our business anyways, in the exploration, development, and mining business, was really a banner year. Commodity prices look like they're very strong. Investment demand has been very strong from an equity participation perspective. So a lot of the companies are getting funded, particularly those that are in precious metals, which would be gold, silver, and PGM, so palladium, platinum, rhodium. And then recently, there's just been this massive fire hose opening up of ESG investors, and that will, of course, positively affect the amount of money going towards plays that are around electrification or battery power. So you've got nickel, copper, lithium, all these metals that had challenges for the last few years attracting capital. Now they're overrun. With platinum, there's a difference between platinum and palladium. It's a sister metal, and a lot of the mines in the world will produce both palladium and platinum, and rhodium for that matter, to a lesser degree. But platinum has different industrial uses, and it looks like it's little more industrial, and palladium is a little more weighted towards the automobile business. And so, they will be affected differently. They'll be priced differently. And I've been super impressed with in the last little bit with platinum prices coming back up. And I think it really just comes down to platinum's widespread use as a store of value. And I think it was really undervalued relative to gold last year. Gold ran and platinum didn't. I think people understand platinum bars and coins and that type of thing, and the demand really picked up.
Yeah, and can you see the 1-year chart there where, it looks like platinum, wow, during last, all the mayhem with the corona pandemic that was sweeping the U.S. Mint and all of the refineries, looks like platinum got down to as low as $600 about a year ago right now. And it's a nice little double there, Jim. What do you think about that?
It's impressive. That was, but if you think about it, it wasn't, a massive V recovery. It obviously imploded temporarily and then recovered and marched back fairly steadily until we've had to go back there a little bit.
It finished the V around May and then just was like a call option payoff diagram.
But look at February. That's what you're saying, from 1100 to 1300 in a couple of days there in February of 2021.
Yeah, well, I can pull up. I know we'll go to the historical charts in any time period you would like. Silver Chris will produce the chart. Although, Jim, there's a reason that now you can look on the video and see how many people are watching, which does not confirm or deny whether Warren Buffett is watching and checking in to get his platinum insight, because my man Trader Jim is on the show today and mentions such great things as Trader Jim often does about the rhodium price. And since,
wow,
I don't know, there could be a rhodium deposit outside my building and I wouldn't know about it yet. Rhodium, interesting because it is a metal that's not easy to find, but that has the unusual difference that there's no COMEX future for the banks to buy stocks and hedge futures against, which no one seems to be able to understand. But can you talk about rhodium and put that in perspective and what's been happening here?
Yeah, I mean, these deposits have lesser rhodium grades or concentrations, and it's typically it's mined a lot of times along with palladium platinum. In our deposit that we are delineating in northeastern Brazil, what we're doing is now re-assaying all the old higher grade samples from previous operators to see what kind of rhodium content there is. There's a difference in terms of assay costs that actually played a huge part in the lack of knowledge in our project anyways. And I'll just give you that example to kind of inform a little bit. But when you run samples of core or rock samples, you can choose for which elements you'd like to get assays. And the more you have, or certain types of minerals will have different costs. And just running rhodium alone will double your assay costs. So if you had a project that was light on budget and you were looking for palladium and platinum, and you had the decision to make, do we have enough money to run all of these samples for rhodium or not? You might say, well, it's twice the price, let's not bother. So that was just interesting. That's something I didn't know 2 years ago, and now I know it because we're responsible for budgets. But we're going back now because the price of rhodium has gone, in technical parlance, bananas, and there's a lot more interest in it. And so from our perspective, I mean, go back to March 2020 on the rhodium.
I mean, Jim, if I may interject for a moment, and you'll put up with me for a second here. Look at that, from beginning of the year, 17,000 to what are we at today? 27,000. I mean, that's a move so big it would catch your attention.
Even my attention, yeah. Even a guy like me who wouldn't notice much. But go back to March, where was that at that low?
12,500. Now it got pummeled to 5,500. So, Jim, have you ever been on Proven Improbable with Maurice Jackson?
I have not.
Jim, I guess we lost you for a second. Do you know my friend Maurice Jackson, who runs Proven Improbable? Have you ever been on his show?
No, I have not. I said I have not, and then it was this awkward silence between you and I. There was no communication. Do you hear me now?
Well, I'm just saying that'd be a good. I'd love to hear. I tried to see if he was free now, because he's probably, knowing Maurice, the one that was eating up all the platinum like Pac-Man down at 5,500, getting the 5.5, maybe 5.65 bags on that one. Jim, do you think this is tied to the fact that we're seeing a run in rhodium more so than silver, where, you know, everyone I talk to, it seems like people are buying a lot of silver, yet the price goes down? Do you think there's a connection here between this one soaring and silver falling right now?
No, I don't have any opinion on the connection between them. I think in this case, it's a highly, let's agree to disagree and have a lovely conversation here. But I think that it's just the market is opaque, it's illiquid, there's a scarcity, and there's demand that's strong. in the auto sector. So you've got strong demand and consistent demand. You've got spotty supply. You've got a market that really nobody knows about, relative to other markets. That drop that happened in March of last year, I remember looking at it going, how can something fall out of bed so quickly in terms of rhodium prices? And then look where we're at today. So, any kind of speculator activity in a highly illiquid, small, opaque market, it's bound for manipulation, or at least some excitement at the least.
Yeah, makes it all the much more easy to rig. In fact, I remember when I first started feeling that silver was manipulated, or gold too, was right in September of 2011 when US had just gotten downgraded. They basically canceled the debt ceiling. And things weren't looking so good there, yet in the middle of a holiday weekend, the Swiss decided their currency was just getting out of control, strengthening, as you know, Keynesians fear. And so they pegged to the euro in the middle of the night. Gold gets pummeled from 1900, which you wouldn't see for a couple of years later. That's when I started thinking there's something funky with silver. And I was on an options floor at the time, and it just struck me how similar with options, there's some people who follow it and are very into it, but you could have, missiles being launched on the option board or God knows what, and most people would have no idea. So I agree with what you're saying about the smaller markets having a tendency. It's like the diamond market, I hear, is quite a racket, but however one wants to look at it, there is rhodium 17,000, so up 10,000 on the year. Quite a move. And let's pull up the 1-year platinum chart here. We'll pull up the 2020 and the 2021. And Jim, I'm even going to give you the charts and some data should you like to look at any particular days here. So any thoughts as we have, there's the 2020 chart and 2021 where you can see 900 and November, let's call it. Actually, November, you can see 855 on November 2nd. And today we are at 1204. Have been as high as 1294. Looks like the peak of this recent rally. So any thoughts on any of that, sir?
My thoughts would be go back further, get more perspective, go back 5 years.
My thoughts are wrong chart, buddy. Okay. Which I have some multi-year charts here and yearlies, whatever Trader Jim would like for the audience.
I would say from, let's go back. Let's look at the last time there was a crisis. Go from 2007 to 2021. Let's look what happens when the shit hits the fan and what happens to the markets of these materials.
Do you mean kind of like how when platinum hit its all-time high of 2,300 2 weeks before the Bear Stearns JP Morgan deal?
Perhaps. Let's see what happens. Get a little bit of perspective in your day.
Yeah. Well, there's 2007 was a nice little year.
It really was, wasn't it?
Maurice would have been upset. He gets upset when the prices of assets he owns go up because he likes things on sale.
So he's constantly a buyer?
Well, he has a non-American investing style. He likes to buy low and sell high rather than the typical chasing momentum, buy high, sell low. So he's a contrarian investor, I believe is the term.
Yeah, it sounds like he listens to Rick Rule.
Yeah, those guys that end up with billions of dollars, who would listen to that nonsense. But what do you think here, Jim? What do you think Maurice would look? What would Maurice do?
Well, the reason why I kind of wanted to get the longer term view is because it has run, let's say 30-40% in the last small amount of time. But if you look historically how it stacks up against palladium, let's say, or how the pricing looks compared to other years, the platinum price really isn't out of control. Look at that. So that's 2008.
Yeah, different story there.
Yeah, the high there was 2,300 an ounce.
Yep.
In
2
those
weeks
dollars
before the deal.
Yeah, but in those dollars, that was 12 year ago dollars, right? So a dollar is worth less today, let's say, and those were 2,300. So now it's in the 1,200 space. There's room to run. It's a useful commercial metal. It's a precious metal. It's got value as a store of value and a currency if need be. It's a hard asset. So I think it's a valuable thing to hold on to. So looking at the prices, that's 2009. It got to 1,500, so just have some historical perspective in terms of there's 1,800. It's not high now at all. I mean, really relative to years past. And
Jim,
yes.
As the brilliant investor that you are, who knows more about just the rocks in the ground, but actually how these markets work, curious what you think of the volatility here, because when you see these drops, I think this is exactly what the JP Morgan trader was confessing to when he said he spoofed on multiple. I don't know how many times he spoofed in platinum and palladium, but they did acknowledge that they were spoofing the crap out of those too in the records from the Department of Justice. And somehow it's amazing that I've missed this over the last 10 years, but someone pointed out in a video I was watching the other day how one of the things that happens when you have moves like these, anyone who has a stop order, they get kicked out of their position on that drop down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So especially if the JP Morgan traders already acknowledged that that's what they did to screw their customers. And then I have Bart Chilton, former CFTC commissioner, who I asked, because, hey, I don't have the trading records, but I explained my interpretation of how the price gets nudged a little bit. And then, if you rig some headlines that get some of those algorithms that don't even have a human behind them and all that stuff kicking, the price drops. But what I had amazingly missed was that if you have the stops placed there, I even mentioned the stops to him, but I didn't really think about how, essentially, if you're not saying, and you don't have to comment on this if you don't want, I'll just say hypothetically, if someone is short and they're worried about the price going up and they can do that, that's a pretty convenient way of being able to get out of your short position, because if all the people who get stopped out on the way down there, maybe that's why Bart Chilton confirmed when I asked him, is it the same people who are buying at the bottom? And he said the only difference between what I described and what happens now is because of the leverage in the market. When they spoof, it's that much bigger. So you can pass, or if you have any comment on that, please.
Well, I don't, one of the things you don't see there is volume, let's say. So for example, let's just go along with what you're saying and saying these guys short, they push hard, they try to have their friends in the media collaborate to push some bad news, to create some selling. These stops kick in, those guys, that means that if your stop gets kicked, I assume what you're saying is now you're a seller as well. And there's a whole bunch of sellers, which of course brings in more shorts. In a weak market like this, I think they're attracted. It's like sharks circling, they can smell blood. And so it is a self-fulfilling prophecy that it comes down. What I like to look at when I see when stock prices or indexes are going down, that little kick, like at the bottom, do you see how the price dropped precipitously and then kicked at the bottom?
Yeah.
I believe those may be indications of the shorts covering. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I think that makes a ton of sense. I think that's exactly what Bart Chilton confirmed. And, and that's what, you actually, you mentioned you can't see the volume there. I don't have the chart from that day in platinum, but I'll show you a little magic trick here if you'll bear with me for 1 second, because Jim, I don't know if you heard, we talk about silver every once in a while on my little YouTube show circus that I've started here. And here's the Feb 2nd, where in the midst of panic buying and record SLV additions that even reportedly added this day, you see the volume spike here. The thing drops off a cliff. This was an hour before JP Morgan's sell announcement, which I'm sure was completely unconnected. Yet I had one experienced trader talked about, with the way that was worded, that without even people seeing it, there are algorithms that pick that up and would have made sell decisions, which makes this looks a little bit ominous and reminds me of exactly what you were saying, where could that be short covering? You're darn well right. It very likely could be, because Jim, here's 2010. This is the period during which Ben Bernanke's coming up with this whopper. Here's where he announces that he's going to launch QE2. Now, I would suggest anyone who thinks these markets work on a fundamental or rational basis to explain to me how the value of platinum dropped $250 for the summer, and then somehow right here, and then when Bernanke announces QE2, it goes up, then becomes less valuable, and that's just regular buyers and sellers and hedgers, that somehow the hedging profile of the platinum miners or jewelers was changing that wildly in the middle of 2010 seems a little implausible to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think if you kind of see a broader term where the markets are really rolling over and then they're getting pushed down by shorters, you'll see a lot of those kicks up. It happens regularly all the way along, where it's
is that the kicks up again? Is that what you're saying there?
Yeah, that little thing right before October
2011.
7th, yeah.
What about 2012? Are these the kicks again?
Well, that could be. That's yeah. There are little spikes, and they're followed by subsequent downdrafts, and then spike.
I mean, if kicking looks like
are
these kicks again?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the World Cup is being played out on the platinum chart here.
Yeah. So
no, not even a chuckle for my World
market,
Cup joke.
I think, where people are pushing it down and then covering a short and then pushing it down and covering a short. Maybe they want to cover short before the weekend, so they're not short going into
There's Pele working, came back to look at that chart.
Yeah. So I don't know looking at it, but that's what I see when I see charts where you've got a real downdraft, whether it's the NASDAQ, whether it's platinum, whatever, and you see these kicks as it's going down. It looks to me like those that are pushing down will cover their short occasionally.
Well, Jim, that was pretty much what it looked like to me. Actually, before we wrap up here, would you believe that? Are those the kicks on last night's silver chart, where somehow the value of silver at what was this, 8 o'clock, right as Hong Kong was opening? I guess everybody in Hong Kong was just dumping their metal, see it fall off a cliff.
Wow. Right where your arrow is right now is, I would say that somebody was covering there, but those with more guts continue to push it down, an inch to the right or half an inch to the right, where your black arrow is. So,
Jim, what do you think the volume chart on that one looks like? Well, if you had to guess, like blindly, obviously no one could know without seeing it, but what would you think?
In a normal market, that would be massive volume to push it down, but maybe you're going to surprise me and tell me it's light.
We'll just keep talking for a moment, tell a joke, or actually, while I pull up the volume chart, we have an update from Kuya Silver coming up in 4 minutes, so we're going to have to wrap. But as I get the volume chart, can you please let folks know, because I do appreciate you being here, and tell them a little bit about Valor Metals and how they can find out if they are interested in platinum or palladium exposure.
Or uranium. Go to our website, valormetals.com. We hold one of the highest grade uranium assets outside of Canada's Saskatchewan's Athabasca Basin, called the Angelac. And then we have a palladium and platinum project in northeastern Brazil called Pedra Branca. We just finished an oversubscribed financing. We got lots of dough in the bank, and we're ready to rock and roll with the drill rigs. Starting within the next 2 to 3 weeks, will be drills on site, drilling, news releases, hopefully great assays to come, discovery, resource expansion, and glory like never before.
Yeah, well, especially with all those soccer games that have been going on, pushing, keeping the price lower than just not legal license trading financial advice, but just lower than I would think, especially even all that money that's been printed since 2008, like you very astutely pointed out there, Jim. Oh, and good news. We do have today's silver chart up. Are you able to see that now?
Yeah, yeah.
And here's last night, right before the kicks, little spike in volume, middle of the night as the price gets torched. To show that in perspective, that's this move here. So
Hmm.
basically, when this happened, all those people in Hong Kong were just so anxious. They were fighting over themselves. It was like a corona pandemic. They were rushing to the exits to sell their silver at that particular time. Although, Jim, I'm going to leave you with, you don't have to think about this, but I'm just going to tell you. So if you wonder later on, and then you won't be able to say, Chris, how come you didn't tell me about it? Okay.
Yeah, I trust you.
So here is the 3-year platinum chart. Now, this glorious red line here is the commercial position. So the farther below the equator means the more short they are. So here they're pretty short. You can see the price coming down. Then as they get flat, prices give it a little freedom. But you watch as they get, here that red line's blowing out again, getting really short. And then boom, drop the hammer, buying back positions, reducing their short position. Looks like they're getting pretty nice and short again now. So I would imagine we're about to see either the hammer drop, or I guess what makes it a little challenging. Now you could just, and there are times I've done it where you just trade this thing and it actually works out pretty well. Although, what is the point at which this scheme gets overrun? Is it when Janet Yellen decides to finally go big and show off her bazookas like the ECB did a couple of years ago? Who knows? We may be close. Although, Jim, it'll sure be fun to follow. I appreciate your insight and wisdom here today. Jim Peterson of Valor Metals. Jim, any final words before we run and hear what Kuya Silver's new deal is all about?
I love it. Like even the sunlight is shimmering in on you right now, Chris. You're bathed in light. So congratulations to you. Thanks for having me on.
It actually is literally reflecting off of the silver on my desk. So thank you, sir. We'll have to get you back on soon and keep us posted any updates on Valor.
Cool. Appreciate it, Chris. Good luck. Great talking to you.
Thank you. And folks at home, flip on over Kuya Silver update. I think you're going to want to stay posted on what David Stein has been doing. And I will be in the chat on that one now.